Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Long-time Kenny teammate Octane has given his perspective on what's going wrong for Kenny at OpTic right now and exactly what he needs to change to get back to form. Octane reckons that what Kenny's currently going through, Octane went through as well in his career, and what he did to get out of it, maybe Kenny can take a similar approach to get OpTic back to some of these images rather than what's happened over the last few days. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to start here. eBeZy has been in the conversation to getting back into the league. It's by no means guaranteed, and he's not exactly been excellent in challenges. Like, he's not been a clear, star-studded top player that needs to come back in ASAP. Nice little 1v2 here against, Real and Scrap. I mean, to be fair, he does manage to find a gap and a nice little timing here, but to be fair, this is what eBeZy usually does. Great search and destroy player. There are teams out there that could well need to improve in their search and destroy, but a nice little 1v2 for eBeZy. Look, he's in the convo to getting back in the league. Obviously, he's going to be as a world champion with the name value that he has. People are saying, Kenny for eBeZy and all this could be an option. Look, it's something that may need to be considered, but it's not something that I think is an especially good idea. But I do think there are other teams out there that eBeZy could most certainly improve. Now, Rahm Ray, this I thought was interesting. He had a bit of a throwback here to, I mean, look at this, 2014, 30th of March, 2014 at, well, as he says, Ghosts World Championship, of course, that season. If you guys aren't familiar, the World Championship used to be far earlier in the year because they used to coincide it with the release of the second DLC, so people would buy it. That was usually how it went. And Champs was not at the end of the year, of course, as it is today. I think that only first started in Black Ops 3. But as Rambo says, random COD convo came about yesterday. What is the single most dominant map win in COD history at a major event? Now, I know there was some talk as well about the 250-14, if you guys remember Cold War, when we had that like absurd hardpoint map between Toronto and Los Angeles Thieves. I think that was a major, but it was online. So, because at that time it was online. So whether that really counts, I guess that's the question. Many would say LAN. And to get dominant map wins, I think you are talking about 6-0 search and destroys, but the level of dominance here is pretty dramatic, right? Because as he says, until the final round, nobody even had any kills. Like, imagine that. Imagine the whole team being 0-5 in a search and destroy. Like, no one even got a single kill. It was, complete squad wipe after squad wipe after squad wipe for 5 rounds. aBeZy finally got 2 in the final round, but then they won anyway. So, Cinta had a donut, 0-6. Saints had a donut. Dino had a donut. And, Rambo, Merc, Nameless, and Study. And Nameless and Rambo both went flawless. Nameless went 9-0. And I thought it was kind of cool to see 0-4, because, of course, players like 0-4 not been around very long. I don't imagine that he was watching the Ghost World Championship, right? Let's be real. So, it was like, damn, Nameless, like, my guy, ain't know you got it like this, Unk. I used to be locked into it. Nameless was a quality player back in the day in Ghost. Like, definitely put some respect on his name. There was also this discussion from Parasite here on the state of the meta right now. We know that Dashy was not very happy about it the other day. He talked about the no-skill meta and all these changes. And I mentioned this on the show actually last night, whether another gun coming back could be the idea, because the aims is okay, but it's not the strongest AR. Many ARs weren't even calling for this really. I guess there were some. Most ARs wanted the Jackal nerf to #1, and then they wanted, basically to keep their AR as it was. One option, though, could have been, don't get rid of the Jackal attachments as they have done and allow in another AR, the M4, the Model L or something. I think that if the community could have voted on it, they would have done the latter, right? And just said, look, let's not ban attachments to all of this stupid cheese stuff. Let's just bring back one of the guns that you maybe shouldn't have banned in the first place. So that was an option. Parasite's promoting it, but unfortunately, I don't really think that's going to happen. But let's talk about Kenny again. It was a tough week. It is the story of the day, and people are talking about, all right, what's Kenny got to do to fix these issues? Because as I said earlier today and yesterday, it's not like OpTic can just say, oh, well, let's just, work it out as a team and it's all going to be fine. It's like, okay, OpTic need a plan of action. They need, all right, we're going to try this, we're going to try that, we're going to try the other thing, because, yeah, Kenny's not playing well. It's not just a Kenny thing. I don't think the team is playing well full stop, but I do think that they would be helped massively by Kenny playing better individually. I mean, his performance against Rocco was, as he says, totally unacceptable. And it was. I mean, 90 deaths in 3 maps as an AR. Like, what is he doing on the map? And PaulEhx is going to have some very interesting comments about that here in just a second. Obviously, Kenny, some people are criticizing him, some people are defending him. I mean, I think everyone is being critical of his play. It's more a matter of, is it the correct decision to get rid of him for the longer term, what OpTic are looking for? And even Scump commented on it and said, yeah, Kenny had a hard time, but you know, the people were just rampant in his chat, getting him to say something about the way that the team was. And obviously he eventually did say, yeah, Kenny's struggling, he's got to step up his game. But a couple of things that I wanted to get into here. Last night on the show, we had PaulEhx, Nestriel, and we had O4, and we had Gersh come on at the end, so shout out all the guests. But when these boys were on the show, we obviously asked them about the series they just played against OpTic. I know that people were joking around, right, because we've seen this a little bit before, when after a victory against OpTic, it's like they do the press tour, right? So you get the players that just beat OpTic, and then they come onto all the shows, and they do their little press tour around. And I don't know, we asked them to come on, they were happy to do so, so I thought it was great. But yeah, PaulEhx, of course, he turned it around massively. That's what Ace says in the clip I'm about to share. PaulEhx was pretty woeful in the online stage in Major 1, and he was on the verge of getting dropped. His numbers were not good at all in many of the series they played. But Paul has turned it around. He's found a way to level up and improve and work better with the team, and now he's looking really good. And you know, certainly if he keeps playing like this, he ain't getting dropped anytime soon. So you know, Ace was kind of wondering, all right, Paul, how did you figure that out and what's going on with Kenny? But Paul gave the perspective that when he was playing Ken in the series, he was just always out of position, right? And I think this ties in with what I'm about to share with Octane as well. The Kenny's trying to make plays, he's trying to help out the team, he's maybe chasing losses to some degree, because I don't think I've ever seen Kenny, or really any player, go on as many death streaks. I mean, he had that 16 death streak against Miami at the Major. I think he might have had like a 12 death streak against Rocker the other day, maybe against FaZe, I don't know. Like, it was bad, right? And like, why does that happen, right? How can a pro player be going on that kind of streak? I think a lot of it is mental, right? Obviously knowing that they're playing bad, maybe trying to compensate for it. I think that's also not exactly an issue, but I mentioned it on the show that Kenny's a smart player, no doubt. Like high IQ player, whatever. There's certainly some players, they might be having a bad map or bad series or dying a load of times in a row, and they're like, whatever, I'll just keep channeling, you know, keep running at the hill, keep channeling, keep doing what I'm doing, because you know, okay, I've died 5-6 times in a row, but that's just bad luck. Next life I'll get them type thing. Whereas maybe Kenny, he tries to adapt. He changes his strategy to some degree. He says, oh, okay, I've died this way, so I'm going to do this instead. And maybe that's actually a bad idea if you're making suboptimal plays. So, yeah, difficult to identify, but Paul says Kenny was looking pretty lost on the map. And that's pretty unusual for Kenny. I think it says about a wider team thing, but also the team thing, you could argue, is stemming from Kenny on an individual level. So let me share what Paul says and also what Octane has to say on what he should do to get out of the slump.
We can say we've seen you turn it around in a big way. You watch COD, obviously you're watching people play, you're watching how people take routes and such. When you watch OpTic and you watch Ken struggling right now, what do you think is the biggest factor there? Just curious from your perspective as another guy who is, you know, fucking turned around big time and is kind of killing it right now. Where do you think he's slacking that he can improve on?
Man, I just felt like yesterday, whenever I seen his name on the map, I felt like I always caught him like out of position or like off guard most of the time. And I don't know if that's like a comms thing or that's like on him, like him, but I don't know. Every time I seen him, I swear to God, like he was like strafing the open, like didn't even know I could be there, or just sprinted in. I don't know, just always catching him off guard. Yeah, from what I seen playing against him, I just feel like I don't know, he's getting caught off guard a lot.
They need Ken to start playing better. They need everyone to play better. Ken in specific, it just seems like this game is rough for him for whatever reason. I think that he just doesn't understand the flow of this game the way that he needs to. Because it's just, when I brought it up yesterday on the show, those death sprees that he goes on, it just means that he's getting put in the blender. Like, he just doesn't understand his spawns off timing, or he's trying to overcompensate for something. Like, maybe he thinks that he needs to make a play every time when it's not his turn to, you know what I mean? Like, he's trying to get to a spot, or he's trying to hit a timing that isn't there because he's not the one that's supposed to do it. But he goes on these death sprees of like 10 plus in a row. It's kind of nuts. It wasn't the same problem that I had in Vanguard, but he's playing the same that I did in Vanguard when I was underperforming. He just isn't worried about his individual performance enough. I think that's the problem, or one of the problems. I feel like if he was more worried about how he was playing individually, then I think things would turn around for him a little bit more. Like, he just wants his team to play well, and he just wants to win. And I think that, like, he's trying to skip steps in order to get to that point. That's kind of how I was in Vanguard again. Like, I was so worried about everybody else, not so much what I was doing, and it was causing us to lose. I'm not saying Ken's the only reason they're losing, but he's a large part of it. So I think if he just slows the game down for himself and worries about his individual play a little bit, over the next couple of matches, I think that they'll be fine.
Of all the pundits in the CDL, of all the retired pros, if there's any opinion that I tend to take as pretty gold standard, it's what Octane usually has to say. So, you know, good gas, but I think it's true. Octane knows his stuff, he knows what he's talking about, and he teamed with Kenny for a long time as well, so he understands the dynamics there. And I think his perspective was interesting, how players like Kenny and even players like Octane, when you get to that point in your career, you know and recognize that KD isn't everything, which it isn't, right? People look at KD probably too much. Now, look, a 0.59 is a 0.59, and there's no getting away from that was an unacceptable performance. But the point is, though, that the pros realize that if they have a 0.9 and make the right decisions, that's better than a 1.2 making the wrong decisions. And that is very true. But the players also need to recognize that getting kills is pretty important. And there's this big debate, I guess, between pros that have that understanding about playing selfishly versus selflessly, playing for the team and playing for themselves. Often, as an AR, you know, Kenny wants to make sure he's making the right play. Was he making the right play? No, clearly not on many an occasion. But it feels like Octane thinks, all right, Kenny was trying to make plays to help the team, and he says, look, whatever, my stats are terrible, fine, but if we win, then it's going to be okay, right? Kenny's willing to take the heat of having a poor individual KD if his team wins the game. Now, obviously, he's not executing that the right way, but Octane says that in a similar way to with himself back in the day, Kenny just needs to say, all right, this map, I'm just going to go out there and get kills. I'm just going to play to have a good individual performance. Because there might be knock-on effects of that. Kenny, first of all, might realize how he needs to play in order to get kills on the map, which might help him actually do so, even when he is trying to play more for the win than he might otherwise be doing. And also, I think it's going to help the team confidence, like, even on some stupid level, right? Like, if Kenny actually starts cooking a little bit, the rest of the team's going to be like, okay, fair enough, we only won that map by 5 points and we outslide by 35, but nice map, Ken, let's go, right? Like, you know, this is the thing. FaZe, a while ago, they were winning quite a lot of maps, quite marginally, but outslaying massively. And that's kind of a problem because you're talking about efficiency, right? Like, you know, you being efficient with your kills, which is a thing that you want to be as a team. But also, if you're outslaying the other team so bad, you're demoralizing them and you're gassing yourself up as well. If you're just getting kills all the time, that, you know, your dope is going to the moon. So I think that's Octane's perspective, that at least if Kenny can, he should try and play a bit more for himself, play a bit more for the numbers. Maybe let Dashy work on some of the objective stuff as well. Let Shotzzy Pred figure that out. And maybe that's going to help Kenny get to the level that he needs to be at, right? It's absolutely possible, but I do think the main thing for me is that with OpTic this week, they need to identify some strategies. That may be one of them. They do a day of scrims and they say, all right, Ken, today, you know, just play for the kills, as Octane suggested, if they've seen this clip. And we'll see how that goes. If it doesn't work out, okay, fair enough. Let's try something else. Maybe they even go for the route, as I suggested, putting Kenny on the sub, putting Pred on the flex, see if that works. That may not be a good idea in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's worth a try, because I think you've got to try something, right? Like, and even just play a third set of scrims, or play extra time, or say, right, Kenny, get into some 8s, play a bit more of that. I don't know. Like, they've got to have a strategy at this point. In the same way that FaZe, when they knew that they sucked back in December, they had a strategy of playing a lot more COD, putting in more hours, running the third set of scrims against an amateur team that nobody else was doing, and putting in the time to improve. So I think OpTic have to have a similar approach, whatever exactly that looks like in terms of what steps they might take. And as Drazah says, people forget so fast. Now, I can only imagine this is to do with the Kenny situation, right? Of course, they teamed together, they won a world championship together, and look, Drazah knows how good Kenny is. So I think there's a feeling there as to Drazah saying, look, it's not been a good ride for Kenny in recent weeks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay like that going forwards until the rest of time. So tweet your thoughts in the comments below, but look, the reality is OpTic are bottom of the league this stage. The seeding for the minor, by the way, has already been determined based on the standings after Major 1. So OpTic actually play Falcons in the first round of the minor in a couple of weekends' time. So, you know, that's interesting for a couple of reasons, and I'm not going to go into too much more detail on that just as of yet. Just one final thing I thought was pretty cool. Yesterday, I turned on the, you know, the TV when I was having some dinner. I saw Rick Shields' latest video. He had a, you know, basically plays around a golf with a pro. Like, Rick Shields is a great player, but he ain't a pro, and he starts 10 under par, and he sees if he can beat them over 18 holes around a professional course. So here they are, I think, in Adelaide for, it's on Australia, basically. So Jon Rahm's here anyway, and if you guys don't remember Jon Rahm, who won the Masters in 2023, I think it was 2020, or a few few years ago anyway, before he won the US Open, or even after he won the US Open, that weekend, when he said that that morning he'd woken up and watched OpTic Chicago, and basically revealed that he was an OpTic fan and he was a fan of that team. And I thought it was just kind of cool that yesterday, with Rick Shields, he was talking a bit about COD as well, and said that he hasn't played in a while, but he watches Scump's channel and he watches Octane as well, so I thought it was good gas for the Donut Boy. But I just find it a funny idea, right, that probably John Rahm might have watched a Flank episode, seeing the guys beefing with each other. He may not have watched any videos on this channel, but he probably at some point has looked into YouTube and seen a TacticalRab thumbnail with Center doing a pull-up on the side, and that thought does make me chuckle. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.